What's up, HR fam? It's Jace, aka Mini Lego, and this is my Mod 11B Hunter Ranger video. Now, before I get started, I just want to remind everyone to use the bookmarks down below. If you're looking to fast forward over to the builds that I have, there's going to be quite a lot of builds from what you can see up here. Now, first things first, the Hunter Ranger Academy. I've gone back and forth multiple times, and I am now dead set on doing this. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a guild comprised of 100% Hunter Rangers. Now, the reason I've had difficulty in the past is because I can't find anyone willing to trade a guild of Guild Hall 10 or higher for in-game items. So if you yourself or if you know anyone that has a guild that they're willing to trade, please let me know. My gamer tag up above right there. Now, so basically what my goal is to do is I want to have a community of HRs helping to improve and build up any HRs willing to join. As before, if you are interested, there's no item level requirements. So if you're interested, just send me an Xbox message. Again, gamer tag right there. Now, before I get into the builds, one last thing I want to cover is that this is how I like to play my Hunter Ranger. There's no one right way to play the game. It's as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. So if you're going combat, archery, trapper, as long as you're having fun, that's the way to go. All right, now let's get into the builds. Oh, and if anyone's curious why I have a Lannister crest on my shirt, it's because it says, I drink and I know things. Alright, so first up we have the PvP Combat Pathfinder build. I might be a bit biased, but this build is pretty awesome. Before I get into the feats, I just want to explain how this build works, and also mention with loadouts, there's no way to change the initial rollout. So just remember you need to go with as much dex as possible, because dex for Hunter Rangers equals more damage. Now, with and also this actually applies more with the feats that I'll go over in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that and also say that this build revolves around piercing damage that combat gives you. The high amount of damage coupled with the high crit severity and high crit chance that we're building onto this build is going to allow you to shred through any target. I know there's a nerf coming up in the coming months, which I'll go over the changes that are needed for this build to still apply. Let's start getting into the feats. So feats, here are my combat feats. I'm going to start from the beginning and go right through. So I have, of course, like I said, the crit chance is really important, so 3 out of 3. Increase HP for PvP is extremely important, so 3 out of 3. More damage dealt when switching stances, so that's 3 of 3. These other two don't really provide as much, don't really give you any benefits, so I don't really put anything in those. I gave it 1 out of 5 for the swift footwork, 3 out of 3 for endless assault, more encounter damage, which is good. I skipped on this one and I went with increasing the deflect chance by 2%, so 2 points in there. 2 points, and the important part about this one is to remember, even though your out wills when you're doing combat is the most important thing, there's not a lot of times where your enemy in PvP is not going to be looking at you. So I only went with 2 points out of 3. And the reason I did that is because this is the one I was just mentioning about dexterity. So this one, the more dexterity you have, the increase the amount of bonus damage dexterity gives you by 6% with 3 out of 3. Moving on from there, I went 5 out of 5 for Serpent Weave. I'm just going to cover these real quick. Fluid Hunter, increased crit and deflect chance by 2.5%. Lucky Blades, critically striking or deflecting attack grants you for 6 seconds, which grants you more AP and damage for your encounters. I want to mention this importantly, I skipped Skirmisher's Gambit. With the amount of crit severity that I'm getting from boons, as well as the crit chance that I need, this feat is really important to skip. I know in my before videos I highlighted this and it still applies. This is an extremely big risk, and the amount of crit chance that I can get in PvP by myself without my companion isn't going to be enough for this to play a part, so it's better just to leave it off. Wild Medicine is extremely important in PvP. I know, especially what it says it's half as effective, but it still works really well. Piercing Blade, this is where we get the majority of our piercing damage, or maybe all of it. Scything Blade, more melee damage, more damage. Melee attacks grant 3% more deflect and melee damage, so that's good. And then we have our Capstone, which is the Flurry, which this is where you'll see that big burst of damage, and I'll go over the rotation again. Now, instead of using the 5 out of 5 in here or in Advanced Stalking, which only applies when using, which we are using this encounter, but I don't see it worthwhile, I went with Fleet Stance. Now, a good modifier, and basically what I'm saying with these modifiers is if you're a lower level than I am and you're not geared out to the point, which by the way it took me a lot of grinding and a lot of things to do, but there isn't going to be a reason to go with this high crit severity build that I'm going with. So going for more survivability is where I would recommend that you go with. I additionally, from all the enchants and everything that I have a 4K crit mount, which is giving me, if you saw my stats earlier, I'm at 18.5 with no companion summoned. I'm hitting 18,590 crit strike, which gets to about I think it's 70%, right about 70% crit chance, which is, or 65 crit chance, which is really good. And this is without any potions or food or anything, so this even goes higher, and I'll cover that again a little later. But anyways, finishing up, an alternative to going with Fleet Stance is to go with Bloodletting, which gives you 5% more lifesteal in melee. So again, some of the modifiers, this is the first one that I'll talk about, but I'm going to give you more. This is a big one that I think would be good for more survivability. All right, I'm going to move over to the boons. For offense, for the guild, I'm going to go with power. Defense, I'm going to go with the hit points, because the higher the hit points, and I'll cover this in a minute, the higher the hit points, the better. Utility, I'm going to go with the mount bonus, although the healing one at the end right here is pretty good too. And that increases, if you have it, increases healing potions effectiveness from 6 to 48%, depending on how high the boon is. This one's extremely important. I did not cover this because I didn't really focus too much on this, but this increases the damage reduction done by a PvP ward. If your guild has this, this is a really good one to put on. And then as far as PvP boons, we have the 250 power, 250 crit. Players who strike you grant 400 power for 8 seconds. Each foe can only add 400 at a time, so 2,000 max. And then this one, you gain 400 lifesteal, so that adds more to survivability. And then these three are there by default, so I'm not even going to cover them. All right, and basically, like I said earlier, we're going to go with power. We're going to go with crit chance, crit severity, power, and then from there we'll probably just go HP deflect. So power, crit, HP, exactly like I said. So for these, I went, since this build is going to be really strong when it comes to shredding and like taking an inbound, even without the very high crit severity, you should still be able to take down people pretty quick in PvP. I'm going with whatever can give me a little bit more survivability. So this one, I'm going with potion heals, because the other couple ones, this one is giving me a little bit more power when I kill someone, which you're not going to be killing that many people in a row for this to be effective. Deflect, this one's actually pretty good, but I'm sticking with the potion. So maybe this is another good modifier, or actually I still think this is worth it for the modifier, because it's giving you 10% more healing. So then back here we have crit and movement. Again, this build is going to be really focused on high crit severity. Like I said, the modifier would be to go high power, because the whole point of I'm using a Vorpal as my weapon enchant. So if I'm not hitting my crit strikes, if I'm getting really low crit chance, like I said, again, that 4K crit mount helps a lot. Then I would say go really high, go for power and all these for your boons. But anyways, regeneration, because having a little bit is worthwhile when you're out of combat. Regeneration gives you back your health. 3% deflect chance. When taking damage, you have a chance to heal. Like I said before, we want to go for more healing. And then this one's really important, making sure you get more of life steal. So it says it has a chance to steal 3 times as much whenever I life steal. a chance, of course, which is very vague. Combat advantage is really good. Stamina gain. Again, the crit severity, we want to get it wherever possible, and I'll show you in the next second one coming down. When damaged by a foe, again, we want to go for the more healing ones. This one I thought was good. I usually solo queue a lot. This might be a good modifier. I solo queue a lot, so I'm under the impression that if I drink potions when I need them, or even when I don't need them, I can help the allies around me, especially when we're capping bases, to make sure that they're healed and they're good. A good modifier would be to chance when healed to gain up to 3,000 damage. That's a good one. The avalanche might also be a good modifier. Okay, so campaign Underdark. You gain 400 power and 1,600 max hit points. 400 crit, 1,600 max hit points. Combat advantage. That's really good. It's really good when there's more than 2 people on an opponent. Less control effects, 5% less. And then this one doesn't matter because we're not PvEing with this build. More hit points, like I said. Crit strike. I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. Armor pen, 400 lifesteal. And then here, like I said before, crit severity is really where we want to go. I put 3% more into lifesteal because the survivability, I want to make sure I'm not focusing too much in power and where I'm too squishy. Lifesteal, again, is whenever you hit an opponent, you get a percentage back depending on how much lifesteal and lifesteal chance you get. So lifesteal severity and chance. So exactly, so that lifesteal severity increase, shorter durations. My stamina regenerates faster, 10% faster, which is really good. You want to keep moving around in PvP a lot. When striking a foe, you have a chance to gain critical strike. Like I said, crit chance is really important. Power, lifesteal severity, and HP. Crit chance and HP, that one's awesome. This one's when taking damage to gain HP. Lifesteal severity, 400 stamina gain. Again, chance. Well, this one actually went. Yeah, so this one I actually went on the damage one because this one focuses around recovery. This one's more HP, and then this one I split up. If you have the 3 of them to split up, I would definitely recommend doing each one of these. Even in PvE, I split them up because using just one isn't as effective as doing multiple of one. For instance, I can deflect an attack and get 5,000. I can use a healing potion to get healed for 10% more, and on top of that, I also get 1 stack of this, or 1 out of 3 on this, instead of going with 15% more healing whenever I take a potion. And then this is the last one we have. When you kill an enemy, you have a chance to despair and stun the enemy. More crit severity, right? And more lifesteal. And lastly, when you deflect, which we're going to get to the powers right now. When you deflect an attack, you regain up to 8,000 hit points. Okay, so for the powers, I know I haven't covered my powers before in the past. I just told you what to use. And since I'm trying to make this video a little bit faster, I can show you my powers, but just to know, I never showed it in the past because I have an overflow. You can see on the bottom right, I have 11 points available, and I have everything filled up. Aspect of the pack isn't filled up completely, and I'll explain that in the PvE section why that is. Alright, so starting off, we have our dailies. Forest Ghost, really good for moving around, getting around the target, or whenever you're really low on health and you need to get away. That's really good. Aspect of the Lone Wolf, this is probably the most important class feature you can put on. This one adds, I believe it was 35% or 45% deflect chance just when having this on. Next we have the let me go with the last personal. The last personal is Pathfinder's action. This one adds some more deflect chance. That's why I am focusing on deflect, but that's why this is so important. So we'll on our character we'll have high HP, or sorry, on my character I have high HP, high deflect, high lifesteal, which gives me a really good tankiness and survivability in PvP. Alright, so now we have encounters. I covered one of the dailies already. But encounters, I have ambush on my Y. You can see from some of the videos why this is really important. First off, it drops off your encounter really fast. I think the the total cast time is like maybe like a second or so compared to others that are really long. Boar's Charge, this knocks down the enemy and lets you hit them. This one's really actually probably the first one I use when I'm going head to head with someone. And then our third encounter is going to be Fox's Cunning, and this one's really important because this first gets you out of really bad situations when there's maybe 3 or 4 guys on you. You hit that Fox's Shift, you go to multiple targets, and it kind of gets you out of the way in a lot of chances and a lot of times. And then the last daily I have is Disruptive Shot. This one I use because it's really fast to use. It dazes them for not really that long, but it's just something really quick to use. And then of course the most important thing on here is our melee attacks. Our at wills is where we're getting all our damage from. So split shot, split strike is the way to go for PvP combat. And then lastly, our last at will is Hunter's Teamwork. This is both a debuff and a buff, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. No, I guess it's 2 ways a debuff, I guess I would say. It debuffs how hard they hit you, and it also debuffs their defense, I would say, so you can hit them harder. And I'll go over that in a minute. Oh, actually, yeah, let me go over that right now. So this target in front of me, when I am in melee stance and I use left trigger, that actually applies this little that's Hunter's Teamwork, or is this Careful Attack, I should say. Let me verify that because I'm a little the at will for Careful Attack. Yeah, so melee is Careful Attack. That's the debuff, which lets me do more damage. And then I have when I'm in range and I do left trigger, I get that bag, which makes them provide less damage to me. I'm pretty sure it says it here. Your marked enemy deals less damage, and if killed, they drop supplies. Okay, so I'll go over the rotation before I go into the gear and equipment and everything. But really quick, what I do is I start with, if possible, I start with melee, the melee and both instances of Hunter's Teamwork, and then I go through the rotation. So it varies on situations. If there's more than one, I usually try to move around them, kind of like pull one out of them. I mean, like pull one if they're not all together in a group and they're kind of spread out like this. I try to move around and like get around them and maybe just use different encounters. And then once I do have them in a spot where I'm by myself and like they're getting distracted by my clones or by other teammates, I knock them down, and then I start with my right trigger with split strike. And it's really important, and I know I covered this in my past video, but I just want to make sure everyone acknowledges that using flurry, when it pops up on the screen, right there it just says flurry. On the top left, you'll see those 2 swords. I'm gonna do it again. It's 2 blue swords. So do you see those 2 blue swords? Once they're gone, that's when my flurry capstone is gone. And again, my flurry capstone is what's giving me the majority of my damage. So it says flurry for 2 seconds. Your at-will's attack causes your melee at-will's attacks to strike 2 additional times for 165 damage each time. So that's why this build is so awesome. It's because of flurry and what we can do while we're under that effect of flurry. That's it for the most part. Going through the rest, like ambush helps you move around, kind of like exactly like what Forest Ghost does. You go invisible. You can move around for a little bit, kind of like what the rogues do. You have the what's it called? Bear Trap, lets you drop it down fast, start striking the opponent. And then we have this one, helps mitigation for everyone on your team. Adds a little bit of mitigation. This one helps you. This is Fox's Cunning, helps you give you a free dodge or deflect. What is it? A free dodge, I'll say. And that's it. What we have now. Let me go over the my gear, my everything. So everything I have is prestige except for my chest piece. I have the Scion Shroud. The reason I went with this is because it gives me close to 51,000, or actually with the armor kit, if I had it on the HP armor kit, it would give me like 52,000 HP. the reason I went with this is because like I said, HP is really important for this build, especially with the mount insignia bonuses. And this transmute, by the way, I think is, in case you're curious, Warborn Duelist coat. So you should be able to get that with the trade bars and the Tarmaloon trade bar merchant. Headpiece, you don't get this hat anymore. It was like a mod 5 or 6 hat from like from one of the older dungeons. And I have executioners with everything else. So executioner bracers, gaiters, and the arms, bracers, gaiters, and the helm, the hood, whatever. For the 3-piece set, I'm going with Valhalla. So that's my belt, my neck, and my horn of Valhalla back here. All these artifacts are focusing on HP and crit. So just like I said, HP for survivability and crit for extra damage. One of the most important things is Ogma's Token of Free Movement. Whenever I'm stuck in a smoke cloud, or I got hit by frost, or I'm getting repelled by a wizard, or I get stunned. There's so many things that stuns you in PvP. This is where this comes really in handy. You use this, I feel like it's a little glitchy sometimes when you're popping it off, but it's really good to have. And then this one, of course, provides, this is good for I think I have this on every single build. It gives you power and crit, which is like the only artifact that gives you 1,000 power and 1,000 crit. I think the stars gives you 1,000 power and 600 crit or something, which is also really good. But this one I found to work best with pretty much all my builds. For rings, this is a really good modifier to go with defensive rings. I'm running for simplicity's sake because of all the other builds that I have. And because I don't have a million enchants, I'm using the Greater Restoring Ring of Dodd and the Ring of Brutality. So this is actually adding a lot to my power and my crit. As you can see, I have brutals everywhere. My weapons and weapon enchants, I have the Mirage and the Mirage Longbow and Mirage Axes. This is found in the River District. The main hand artifact power. Make sure you're paying attention to that. I'm using the Split Strike, which is granting me 10% more damage. And then for the offhand artifact offhand artifact class feature, I'm using the Pathfinder's Action, which increases my run and deflect chance whenever I use a daily, which is another good reason I'm using Disruptive Shot, because it only uses, I think, 25% of your action point, and it refreshes pretty quickly. And then for my armor and weapon kit, or armor enchant and weapon enchant, I have the Transcendent Elven. This is really important to use, especially against trappers, rogues, and anything else that can stun you. Again, stuns is what you'll find is like the biggest pain point in PvP. That's how everyone does so much damage, or how they get a hold of you where they can do a bunch of damage. And then for my main hand, or my weapon enchant, I have the Vorpal, and again I went over that. Another good modifier, like I said, like I mentioned before, is to go, instead of going with the Vorpal, you go with the Fey Touch and you run high power. So try literally focus on getting low crit and just put everything into power, so that way no matter if you're yellow or orange, you're hitting extremely hard. As far as the transmutes, if anyone was wondering, because it took me a really long time to get it, I'm using the Elk Tribe Noble Horn Bow. You can find this in Icewind Pass. I luckily got it from the auction house, and same thing with this one. It's the offhand of the Elk Tribe Noble Socks. I don't know how to say that. What else? Oh, so defense and weapon, defense, offense, and utility. Utility, I'm going with Dark Enchantments. This gives me more movement. Honestly, this is the only thing that's worth putting in there, other than maybe putting in silveries from like Glory. Defense enchants, I'm using Savages. It provides both hit points and lifesteal. A good modifier for this would be for survivability. If you can't obviously afford Savages, you can split them and go Radiance and lifesteal, depending on what you're missing. Go Radiance or lifesteals. And then for offensive enchants, this again, another modifier. If you think you can get close to the crit, I'm saying somewhere above 60% maybe is really good to have. Lower than that, it's kind of hard because you got to remember that if you're not hitting your orange numbers, if you're not getting crits, then that makes the Vorpal and all the crit severity that you have completely useless. So everything that you're stacking basically for this build would not work. And that's again why I'm saying those modifiers, going for power and going for a really high power and using the Fey Touch. So again, I'm using Brutals for all my office enchants, and this again another reason I'm using these rings is because I'm doing the same thing for my PvE build. For armor kits, I split between crit chance and HP. As I mentioned, I want to make sure my HP is really high, and I want to make sure my crit chance is really high. So I just split them, and it gives me a good median and a good balance. Let's see what else I'm missing to say on the sheet. Oh, the Greater Everfrost Undercoat. The bonus of what you get from this set is really good. So depending on if your lifesteal or your deflect is higher, it'll aid the opposite effect. So actually, I haven't even checked. I think my lifesteal's at 39 and my where's my deflect's at 2,000. So I'm going to be getting more deflect chance, which is good because the higher the deflect, basically higher deflect gives you more mitigation and damage. It lets you take in less damage. So again, let me go back to the inspect. So when your lifesteal is greater than your deflect, whenever you performed a my bad, I said that wrong. When your lifesteal is greater than your deflect, whenever you perform a lifesteal, you would gain double lifesteal. So whatever is actually higher, you get more of that. So since my lifesteal is higher, I get more. Okay, I guess that's maybe better for me anyway. Let me see. Armor for the kits that I have on my rings and stuff, I just went with action point gain. I don't even know if I have any on my PvP. Yeah, I don't even have any on here. But I mean, AP gain or regen would be really good depending on what you are needing. Alright, so now that we have that done, I'm going to go into one of the more important parts, which is mount insignia bonuses. The reason I say that this is really important is because I played a couple matches without, because I forgot that this also isn't part of the loadouts. So when you change builds, you need to check to make sure you have the right insignia bonuses. So Cavalry's Warning, I have an orange mount, a legendary mount. So whenever I use my mount bonus, or my mount power, I get 10% more power, recovery, armor pen, crit, defense, deflect, regen, and lifesteal. This is literally the best one you can have PvE, PvP, because it provides so much. 10% of all of those is awesome, and you can proc your mount guy your mount power every minute. Next we have Barbarian's Revelry. Since this build focuses on really high crit strike, I'm going to be receiving 3,109 hit points every time I do a crit. So, and then it occurs every 2 seconds. So I'm pretty sure I can keep doing that every time. Oppressor's Reprieve. Again, every time I get stunned, knocked, or immobilized, I get more HP. Survivor's Blessing. Whenever I deflect an attack, I gain, especially with my really high deflect, I gain 1,500 hit points. And then whenever I perform a lifesteal, you're healed for 3% of your max hit points. And so like I said, high deflect, high lifesteal is really important, and high HP, pretty much everything. But so why your HP is really important is because the higher your HP, as you see with all of these, it's as a percentage of what you get. So this one gives you 1.5%, this one gives you 4%, this one gives you 3%, and 3%. So all these percentages are what your HP is at. So the higher my HP, the more I'm going to be healed when all of these proc, or each one of these proc. I think that about covers this build. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, food, potions, and where to get them. I have written down. Make sure everything else is good. So food and potions and where to get them. So these are the elixirs that you can get from the Vault of Piety. So from Vaultpedia, and these little tokens you get by praying every day. I bought a bunch of these on my alt actually. I have like 12 or 10 different alts, which is a really good thing to do. Have multiple alts, pray on them. Get these vaults. You get 2 different types of coin. You get celestial and celestial and ardent favors. So ardent favors is where you get these potions that I'm talking about, and so each one does gives you a different amount of stat. So this one gives me increases deflection by 350 and increases deflect severity by 10% for 3600 seconds. And then they all pretty much do the same exact time frame. So I usually take these all, and then the most important part that I want to say on the food and potions and everything is this caprice. This caprice just by itself, when I take it, just to show you, I am at 207,000 HP. When I take this caprice, this adds 7,157. So now I'm at 218,000, and that's pretty awesome. So having this caprice is really useful to have, especially with this build. And then again, the rest of these elixirs give you crit severity, power, and this one stacks with the scales with your level. So it stacks defense, regen, and recovery, and action point gain, which I didn't even know about. Anyway, so those are what I use before or while I'm in a match. I take all those. Your potion, my potion tray, I have my pocket pet, which gives me a random stat. Show you. So petting sounds weird. Petting your double pocket pet will have one of the following effects, and it's random. So decrease threat. That's like the worst one you can get. In both PvE and PvP. Anyways, increase crit severity by 5%. That one's awesome. Increase regen by 67 and action point by 67. So those bottom ones are too good, but the crit severity is what makes this one awesome. And then lastly, we have Timora's coin. This one says it grants you a random, so similar to what that one does, but this one's it stays the same at 371. It gives you a random stat. So I just used it. It gives me 371 defense. That's something, you know, compared to other things that you can put in your potion tray. And that about covers it. So let's move on to the next one. So next one, so the next one was my other PvP build, and I've covered this in one of my initial videos. I'll have a card at the end of the video to link to it. But this is my trapper build. Everything I have on that video is still the same. It basically uses roots as much as possible to stun the target. I basically see this as like a support build. The reason I have it is because if I'm running with another combat hunter, especially with like pre-mades, if I'm going against a pre-made group and I have a friend with me that's running combat, I'll probably just use this. I'll root everyone and he'll go in and smash and just tear those guys up. So you can see that this target dummy is still has roots on him, which is kind of crazy. But this build just focuses on stunning them. So I'm just going to show you these feats really quick. Again, I've covered this in my previous video, so if you want to look at that. But same kind of thing. Instead of going high crit chance, high crit severity, we're going with as much increased strength or control strength that we can go with. And also with making sure we have a really high refresh rate, because we want to spam these roots as much as possible. So let me go through the boons. The boons I think are pretty similar. I'm just going to go through them rather quickly. This doesn't change. PvP, I went with this one, and just go ahead and take a look at the rest of these. Pause if you need to. But yeah, like I mentioned, I just went with like right here. This is where you want to go with high control strength, and then I went with crit severity. So I think this build doesn't provide as much survivability compared to the combat one. Probably just because the fact that I went, sorry, I shouldn't have gone down. Probably just for the fact that I went with more damage on this one, because I did want to support, but I also want to make sure I can at least kill something. And then powers, like I've gone through before, Forest Ghost, the same. I think these are pretty much all the exact same powers. The only difference is using crushing roots. This is where this is what makes this class. This is what gives it the dazing effect that stuns your enemies. And then the only difference is the other two encounters are constricting arrow and hindering shot. And then right trigger, I'm using rapid shot, which I usually don't use for this build. I'm pretty much going to keep that the same. And then for a lot of these loadouts, you'll see that I don't move items around too much because that, you know, it's same thing kind of applies. So I'm not touching any of these. Everything that applied from combat for my equipment, mount insignia bonuses, everything's still the same. The only difference I would do is instead of going with really high crit, I would probably move over to either armor pen, which I have the 4K one, or I would go with the every time I use a daily, it gives me 10% of my hit points back over 10 seconds. So it's kind of works as like another mount insignia bonus. So I mean, it still gives you some tankiness, but I say this is more of like a support class. All right, so that pretty much does it for PvP. Let's move over to the PvE. So starting off, I have the PvE Trapper Pathfinder. All right, so my last video, I went over how combat, like I basically started doing combat. It was like the new thing. I really liked combat, but honestly, I was getting kind of bored of it. So I swapped back to Trapper, and I absolutely love playing Trapper again. This is my go-to build. I still swap to combat when I think it's better for higher DPS, like especially for E demos and reg demos in that first round. Now that we have the ability to just switch builds on the fly, I would say going Combat Stormwarden for that first phase of reg demo and E demo is just, it works so well. And then for the next two phases, second and third phase, I usually go with the Trapper Pathfinder build. But this, just like for PvP, you want to spam your roots. This one provides a lot of damage. And yeah, let me start showing you the feats. So feats, I covered most of the same types of things here. This one gives, so since we're not focused on HP, went 5 out of 5 for the predatory action. What else is different? That's it. That's all for differences in there. Oh, so all the PvE points from here, for Trapper and Combat, pretty sure I have them all focused around Skirmisher's Gambit. So opposite to what I said for PvP, now that I have my companion with me for PvE, I should be able to get my crit chance extremely high. And the reason I say that is if you stack Azures and crit chance, whatever equipment or whatever you have on your companion, it'll give you a lot more crit chance, and I'll show you why in a second. And then as far as Trapper feats, Fleet Stance, Death Strikes, more damage, Forest Bound for cooldowns, Swiftness of the Fox, again cooldown, wait, is it both cooldowns? Yeah, I think they're both cooldowns. Thorn Roots for more damage, and then the Capstone. Again, the reason I went for Skirmisher's Gambit is because the really high severity that this build, and why this build is so powerful. So with that, I used this, lowers my melee chance. I don't really need that much survivability with this build, so I skipped that. And then more deflect and crit chance, which is awesome. Alright, so moving over to the boons. Okay, so this is the last time I'm going to cover boons, and the reason I say that is because I use the same boons for all my PvE builds, basically going with as much power, crit strike, crit severity as possible. So similar to that first PvP build, but not with the HP. I don't stack HP, and I'll cover that in the mount insignia bonuses. Okay, so offense, power, defense, utility, mount, and then this doesn't matter. It's PvP, this doesn't matter. Campaign, like I said, power, crit. I didn't go with HP this time. I went with action point cane. Sorry for that. And then I went with dealing more damage. When you kill foes, you get more power, and that I can maintain, of course. More power, lifesteal, So I'm just gonna go over. I'm just gonna stop the video if you need to at any point. But I'm just gonna go through these real quick. Crit severity, yeah, really important. I don't need survivability. Like I said, I don't need survivability on this one. Moving around, shifting is extremely important in PvE because that's how you mitigate a lot, or basically all the damage, if possible, using just shifting in and out. All right, so let me go through the character and then I'll go with reversal. I'll go backwards on what I was doing before. I'll go over the character sheet. So this is what I'm using. This is a new helm that I'm really excited that I just got recently, and the reason I didn't even know about it. It just came out with this with 11B, and basically what it says is when you're in a party, you gain 2,000 power, and when you're not in a party, you gain 2,000 defense. So if you're not soloing, which if I'm running dungeons, I'm not going to be soloing. This is awesome. So I'm getting 2,516 power, 1,490 defense, and whatever HP. So this is compared to, and I have the Jarl's Gaze here. Compared to Jarl's Gaze provides me 2,100 power. So this one's granting me another 400 power and actually another, what is it, 600 or so defense. So this one's freaking awesome. The only thing that I don't like is that the item level is lower. But I actually got this from the Mysterious Merchant, which he's actually located. Your guild has to build it, but he's actually located right back here. I'm just gonna zoom in for this red thing right here. So if your guild does build it, he'll spawn right there. All right, moving on. I have the Vivified Trailblazers, Raidcoat, arms, and feet, whatever. And then I'm running with Trailblazer set. Trailblazer set is best in slot for any DPS. The reason I say that is because it provides 10% more damage for the overcharge attack. So whenever you proc that, you get 10% more outgoing damage, and it also heals you for 15% of your health over 10 seconds. So what I'm running for rings is the same thing I mentioned earlier, brutality, and I say see, this is the reason I'm kind of lazy on this part, is I don't change it. But this is the 3-piece set I'm not running. I'm actually running company Duelist Cloak. This one gives me 2 dex, 2 wisdom. This is another new item. You get this from your stronghold. I'm just gonna use the map to show you. You get it from this guy, the armor. It's just close to the mimic. So that one's really good. 2 dex, 2 wisdom. Like I said towards the beginning of the video, the more dex you have, the more damage you get. And then for my belt, I have the dex belt. It gives me another 4 dex. So my stat is showing me 34 dex. I'm at 32, and this is without a companion out too. So I'm at 33. I don't really know why it went higher, but 33 power, 20 crit, and then I'll cover those in a second. So same thing, I'm using the Everfrost undercoat. Basically this whole line didn't change except for my waist and neck for PvP. And then all my artifacts for the most part changed except for the Sigil of the Controller. So I'm running Lantern Revelations for crit and armor pen, Sigil of the Trickster for crit and deflect, and Wheel of Elements because the damage that the fire gives you, which is 30% bonus damage, is awesome. That's why you see so many people use that. So main hand artifact power, or what is it called? Main hand weapon enhancements. No, what's it called? Offense. No, I'm so lost. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Equip power, sorry. Increase damage done by Hunter's Teamwork by 12%. Increase damage done by the triggered attack of Careful Attack by 12%. So basically 12% more damage whenever I use Hunter's Teamwork. Increased damage done by Hunter's Teamwork. So, like I covered again, Hunter's Teamwork is my melee. I'm so far away from the target dummy. It's my melee at will. This is pretty much with this build. I'm not going to be using at wills other than this. I don't even remember. Oh, Split Strike. I don't really use that. So for this build, so that is the best one to use because all the artifact powers for your main hand are all at wills. So Hunter's Teamwork is the best one to use. For my offhand, I'm using the Aspect of the Pack. So I've covered this in my last video. Aspect of the Pack is the only one that works at the moment, or that's worth putting on that works anyway. A lot of things are broken with these offhand powers. So aspect of the pack works, but you need to make sure your power for aspect of the pack is only 3 out of 4. I messed up and did 4 out of 4. I haven't fixed it yet. I should. And okay, so as far as offense and defense enchants, this is the more important part. Defense enchants, you do not want to go with Radiance. The reason I say that is for the mount insignia bonus that we're using, and I actually got to change this real quick, so give me 1 second. The last one. The piggy. Okay, so these are all my mount insignia bonuses. And I'll go back to my character sheet in a second. I'm jumping all around. So Cavalry's Warning, like I mentioned, that's the best one to have because of the 10% of everything that it gives you. Protector's Camaraderie, I'm using twice in a row. And Protector's Friendship, they're all related. But Assassin's Covenant was what I was leaning to. I keep tangenting to you. So I lose 10% of my defense, deflection, and lifesteal. And I gain the combination of lost stats as power. So why am I specifying that so importantly is because it's not just 10% of something, it's 10% of the total of what you have. So the more defense, the more deflect, the more lifesteal that you have, the more power you get in turn. And I can prove this. So right now I am at 27. Let me make sure my companion stops attacking. I'm at 27,000. Shit, I just added more defense. Alright, whatever. I'm at 27,000 defense and 56. No, see, that's not. Give me 1 second. Let me defeat myself. Okay. There we go. 35,000 power and 19,800 crit. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take off my defense boon. So 35,000 power. Remember that number. I'm going to take off my defense boon. Put on whatever this is. And now I just dropped about 1,000 or so power. And again, the reason is because of Assassin's Covenant. That's giving me back that 10% that I just lost in the defense. And I just lost in my power. So if I go back and add my defense boot back in, I'm getting more power. So that's why I was telling you in the beginning, or beginning of my tangent there, to make sure that you, for PvE, you're going with more lifesteal, deflect, or what was the last one? Lifesteal, deflect, or defense. Because in turn, it'll give you more power, which is what we want. So that's what I'm going with for all my defensive slots. It's best to go, the best one you can get is the Black Ice enchant. The reason I say that is a lot of people don't notice this is because the amount of stats that you get, so 230, 230, 460, adds up higher than any 1 or 2 stat enchants. So if I'm looking at a Savage, for example, or a Brutal enchant, it's giving me 420 power and 420 crit. Whereas this one's giving me 230 deflect, 230 lifesteal, 460 defense. If you add all those up, you're actually going to be getting a little bit more. Which, you know, after you add up if you have all Black Ice on you, that'll in turn give you more power. It's going to be minimal, but it's still going to be better than just going with a single stat. So, but if you can't afford it, like, I mean, I don't have Black Ice on everything, go with Dark, go with Silveries, or go with Dark Silveries or Azures for defense. And then there's also Black Ice, like I said. That covers that. Armor enchants, because this build revolves around, like any other build, revolves around high crit chance, high crit severity. I have crit kits in all my gear. Do I have it in this one? Oh, I haven't put one on there. I should do that. So I have reinforced with 200 crit on all my will have on my 4 pieces. And then these haven't changed. I think I have 2 regen, 1 regen, and 3 action point gain. That covers this sheet. Oh, transmutes. This one I didn't change. What's this one? Bowman's Hide. I don't know what that is. Cruel Bracers. I probably just looked in the auction house. This one's actually from the Kessel's Retreat. These boots you can get. They're called Black Ice Treads. And then my weapon enchants are really cool. I got this from the Winter Festival, I think. Volcanic bow and volcanic smitters, however you say that. So my sheet that I have here: power 35,000, crit 19,800, armor pen. I know it looks low right now, but 2,000, and then 60% crit chance and everything. And then this is again without my companion attacking. So when everything I have my companion actually procs, all those numbers will go up quite significantly. Let me move back to the mount insignia bonuses. So mount insignia bonuses. So why am I going with so many protectors camaraderies? Okay, so one thing to note is before I go into that, you see right here it says 3% at the bottom. When I took this guy off, it says 3% there, 1% here, so total of 4%, right? When I move this guy back in, I'm only getting a little bit more, which is 0.5%. It's not 3.5 for both of them. It's only a combined 3.5. So these two give me 3.5 and this one gives me 1. So that's 4.5%. So the reason I have so many of these is because it says whenever your summon a companion attacks, you gain a total of 4.5% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. This is the best part of it. This effect can stack up to 4 times. So that's 4 times 4.5. That's somewhere above, what, 16. So that's awesome. So I'm getting 16% more power and defense whenever my companion attacks. Assassin's Covenant, I talked about this earlier. And then Calvary's Warning. And then as far as my insignias, I'm going with Dominance, if possible, everywhere. And then Skill, where I can. I don't have as much diamonds as I would want to get everything loaded with purple insignias, which would drive up my item level too, which would be good. But yeah, going with as much whatever you're missing. If you need more crit, you go with skill. If you need more power, or if you're good on crit, you go with dominance for more power. Anything I'm missing? Companions. Yay, companions. Excuse me. Companions. So why am I using this guy still? even after having all these other guys, especially this orange sellsword that I'm so wanting to use, but I don't actually have the equipment for him. I gotta keep running more Illusionist Gambit. Why am I running this guy? I have 3 rings that are awesome for him. First off, they're not under dark rings, so they will work because they have equip power, and that applies to my companion. Additionally from that, that's pretty much it, actually. Oh, and also this guy gives me a 10% over here. Wicked Strike now shreds a target by defense by 10%, which is really awesome. I talked about this in, I think, my last 2 videos. The other companions that I have are, as you've seen a lot of people run, the Fire Archon, which is actually a really good active companion to have if you have a 2 rings and a talisman that fit this character perfect. What I would say is, if you're having a hard time debating on which active companion to use, I would say it comes down to maybe like 5 different ones, which is the Con Artist, this guy, which is the Fire Archon, the Air Archon, the Sellsword, and the Rebel Companion. And the reason I say those 5 is because they all have 3 offensive slots, which is all good. They're all 5 of them are strikers. But if you were to pick between 2 of them as being like the top best in slot, I would say it would be Sellsword and Rebel Companion. But the reason I'm saying all 5 are really good is because it depends on what you have equipment for. So as you can see, I have some like random orange rings, I think, that are like all defense slots on all these guys that I just have to save space. But if I had a talisman that would give me like a bunch of power, you know, like the Adorable Bites, or maybe from the Skirmisher's Gambit, then I would use this guy instead of my 3 rings. I'd throw him back in, or throw him back in my idle slots, and I would bring in the Irenes of Belial, because this gives me more crit severity, which is really awesome. And I wouldn't need him because he would only be providing me 300 crit strike when he's not summoned. Or vice versa, if I have this active, the Air Archon, if I had a neck piece that worked perfectly, and 2 rings, of course, then I would use this guy, and I would, same thing, I would pull this guy away and I would bring in that Belial's. So it all depends on what you have. But yeah, best, like I said, best in slot I would say is either going to be the Sellsword or the Rebel Companion, because they both do exactly the same thing. All three of these companions do the exact same thing. The Rebel, the Sellsword, and the Con Artist, they give that 10% debuff to a target, which is like another added thing that's awesome. Additionally, from having the 3 offensive slots. So that pretty much covers those companions, and then I have the this guy is the Stronghold Siege Master. Sorry, it says Shadow Fox. I'm trying to remember what his name was. Siege Master. Really easy. It just gives me 4% increased damage, and then if I'm in Stronghold, like if I'm doing Dragonflight, this is good to leave him in there because he'll give me an extra 8% damage. And then this guy is awesome because whenever I'm at full health, which especially if I'm running with like a cleric or a pally and they're just constantly healing me, I'll have an extra 6% more damage. So that's a good way to go. Let me see, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. I think I covered powers. Aspect of the pack, oh no, maybe I didn't. Okay, so let's start back over. Aspect of the pack, aspect of the serpent. Again, this is working with my offhand weapon bonus. So based on how many allies I have around me, I'll get increased damage with my offhand power. But this by itself gives me combat advantage anytime I have an ally by me. So this actually counts for my companion. So right now, if I have my companion right here, which should be attacking these areas. So right now I'm getting combat advantage by him just hitting that. Because he counts as a nearby ally, apparently. Aspect of the serpent, I can't really see of a really good other personal to use with this. I think this one's still broken. You have to be like in a perfect angle behind the target for this to work, is what I've heard. I don't really have the testing capability of what PC does with their like fixed weapon damage, so I can't really test that to the point, but I think it still applies. But in the end, this is still a really good one, especially since you're switching between stances a lot in this build. Then we have Seismic Shot for my daily, right trigger for my split strike for my right trigger, and then just for like any other trapper, you got Hindering Shot, Constricting Arrow, Forest Ghost is good, Hunter's Teamwork, that one's really important. Again, same debuffs that it provides. And then I have Cordon of Arrows, which is probably one of the best encounters that does a good amount of damage for PvE. So my rotation, very similar to what I do for PvP. I first try to mark the target if I can. That one doesn't really matter that much, him doing less damage. I mean, I usually do it for like the end of CN, whatever the boss name is. I can't think of it right at the moment. But the debuff that you get from careful attack is what's more important on the target, especially whenever you're doing boss fights. Make sure you're putting that on. And word of caution here is, if there's another trapper with you, only one of these applies. So if there's another trapper on next to you and he applies Hunter's Teamwork after you do, he's going to be getting the benefit of getting more damage on that target versus you. So so just make sure if you see someone like battling you, try to take it after you see him do it. Anyways, that's something. Anyways, I try to apply that first, and then I go through the rotation. So I go X for hindering. I do net procs biting snares, right trigger, right trigger, RB, RB, and then I get Master Trapper. So what Master Trapper provides, and that's the capstone for feats. Master Trapper provides me 20% of, it helps me generate 20% of your AP, increases your damage by 30%, and increases your thorn roots and control durations by 60%. So basically, whenever you get Master Trapper, you're basically going to be getting more damage. So again, the reason I start with hindering is because I get biting snares, and then I hit RB twice really quick, and it starts my Master Trapper. So hindering, RB, RB, Master Trapper, and then I start with constricting. I move in close, do my cordon, or was it plant growth, and then I follow up with I forgot the name of that slash, and then the other side. Something and then Steel Breeze. And then that's the gist of it, and then you just rinse and repeat. So you can see I'm getting a good amount of damage. And then of course if you have a mount power, you use that in conjunction with everything else. And then when you have your daily, use it, so it gives you a good amount of damage as well. Cordon of Arrows I only really use when I have a chance before I know this target's gonna spawn, especially for like reg demo and e-demo. So when you're putting it on, I put it on the portals, and as soon as they pop in, they pop out of the portal, it does a good amount of damage, like a really good amount of damage, like I think like 3 to like 500,000, depending on if you're getting buffed or whatever. You just saw that I got like 150,000, so when I'm buffed, I get quite a bit. As far as my numbers, when I'm procced, I'm getting 60, and when I say procced, when my companions attacking and my bonding rune swords are going off, and all my mount insignia bonuses are going off, I'm getting a good amount of power, crit chance, everything goes up. So crit chance is 84, and I'm comfortable with that. Crit severity is at 137. Oh, weapon and armor enchants, my bad. So weapon enchants, I'm using my, instead of going with Vorpal, I'm using a Perfect Dread. And the reason I'm going with the Perfect Dread is just at perfect, I'm getting 15% more crit severity than what the Vorpal does. And the reason I'm using it here is because my Vorpal applies to all my powers, whereas the Dread only applies to encounters. So this Trapper build is very encounter heavy. So this works this enchantment works perfectly with this build. And on top of that, I get some like random debuffs, some stuff I don't really care about. But the crit severity is what basically anyone that has this enchantment was what they care about. For DPS anyways. So I'm using that. And then for my armor enchant, I'm using, I mean, you really can go with anything. There's a lot of different things. I like using Lesser Soul Forge. It's cheap. It works really well. It helps, it automatically gets you up every, what is it? Every 90 seconds. Yeah, simple, cheap. I don't know. There's other things you can go with, like I said. Negation's really good. You can go with Shadowclad, or I don't know if Shadowclad's like it. Negation. The one with the rocks. I forgot the name right now. I can't think. Anyway, does that pretty much cover it? Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. My equipment slots, I use the same thing for potion. I use these 5. Since I'm using the relic gear, I use the permafrost. It's basically lets my Vonin go down 50% slower whenever I have my Vonin filled up. So that's what I use for that. All these potions, depending on what I'm missing, if I need more crit or if I need more power, I'll go with one of these 2 potions. You can only put one. You can only pick one. Instead of using the Caprice, I usually go with the Sorbet. And the reason is because it gives me more power. Right now it says it gives me 2100 more power, so that's good. There's also the Squash Soup. I don't know if I have it in here. But Squash Soup provides, I think, oh here it is. It provides 3% more crit severity and crit chance, or 5% more crit severity and 3% more crit chance, which is really awesome. So that's probably better. I just don't have any of it at the moment. And then I forgot to mention about this, but there's also Stronghold food that you can get that doesn't play into account of here, because you can take only one of each. So like one summer food, and you can take one Stronghold food, and then you can take different one of these potions, and then you can take all of these different potions. Kind of weird the way that those potions are this. And then if you're in an FBI or if you're in an MSVA or SVA, use the Potion of Everfrost and switch over if you have it to Jarl's Gaze. And the reason I say that is because even though right now, like I said, this helm provides more power, when you switch over to Jarl's Gaze and use that Everfrost potion, the equip power on this is you gain 20 power for every % of Everfrost resistance you have. So by default now we have, what is it, 30% Everfrost. And then also if you have rings, which I think I have one equipped, this one gives me another 3%, so I'm at 33. This one gives me the arm. You can reinforce your shirt and pants with Everfrost damage, so it's another 10%. What's that? 43%. And then if I take this potion, this gives me another 10%. So, or 5%, sorry. So to multiply that by 50, that's a lot more than what this other helm can do. So that's why I say use that Jarl's Gaze only when it comes to those specific dungeons. So let me move over to the next build. That is the my PvE Combat Stormwarden. I forgot how I have it listed because I don't have it in front of me. PvE Combat Stormwarden build. So this is my second go-to. Very similar. I don't think I've changed much. But basically, the way I think about these two different builds, Trapper versus Combat, what I've compared Combat to, or what I think about Combat now, is it's a multi-target build. Basically, I use it whenever I want to hit multiple targets, especially with the lightning. The lightning works awesome, so awesomely with this build. And yeah, whenever, especially when I think, not so much Combat or Pathfinder, but whenever I think of Stormwarden versus Pathfinder, I consider Stormwarden hitting multiple targets, and Pathfinder mainly focusing on one target and dealing more damage in that way. You can always, like, I think of it, yeah, and if you're going Stormwarden, you can apply more damage to multiple targets, whereas Pathfinder, you can hit at one target way harder than what you would do with Stormwarden because of Hunter's Teamwork. Alright, so let's start into the feats. I'll skip all these. This, I think, is pretty much the same. The only difference you'll see is I took off Wild Medicine and I took off Warden's Courage from my last build. I think that's all I changed. I don't think for the most part, I don't think I need piercing damage. As long as I have my armor pen, which I didn't explain because I'm trying to make this in one whole cut. But the reason I don't concentrate on my armor pen is because I'm getting a good amount, which doesn't seem like a lot, but 1235 armor pen. But when you actually look at my stat sheet, I'm getting 6,500. So when he's not out, I'm only at, and you can see it right there, I'm only at 1,500 or so armor pen, which is really low. But with my companion out and the rings that he has, my resistance ignored is well over 60%, which is, that's awesome. Alright, so let me go back to the feats. I keep tangenting. So I took off Wild Medicine and whatever the other one was. I think it was Warden's Courage. And I put it over here, so Fleet Stance gives me faster movement speed. Really good to have for PvE, especially with combat, because you want to get to the target faster before anyone else does, so you can do more damage. And then the other one I added was Death Strike, so this adds more damage to my encounters. Yeah, not much to say here. The reason I went away from Throw Caution is I didn't really see... I was using it before because it basically, what this power does is it gives you more damage. Let me read it to you guys real quick. Throw Caution. So it says, quickly strike your target and risk lowering your defense to deal increased damage for a short period of time. The amount of increased damage that I saw from this didn't really outweigh the benefit of going with Death Strikes. So I took off that encounter power and I went with, took off the encounter and the feat, and I instead went with Death Strikes. Boons, like I said before, everything is exactly the same as the Trapper build. So if you're looking for the boons, refer to my Trapper build boons that I just talked about a few minutes ago. Companions, everything stays the same. Yeah, that's pretty much, you just want the feats from this, and then I'll go over the rotation in a second. Like I said before, all my equipment, everything else stays the same. The only thing I think I change in here is my weapon sets. Instead of having to change my my weapon enchantment every time, I went ahead into River District and I grinded out and got these Aboleth longbows, and these are probably the best you can get from that set of weapons from River District. So I put in my lightning enchantment, and then more importantly, I changed my main hand and offhand bonus powers, or equip powers, whatever you want to call them. So this one increases damage done by electric shot. You can see it towards the bottom there. and then increases electric shot, and also most important thing for this build, it increases damage done by clear the ground by 10%. Offhand, I kept it the same as the other one because it still applies. You want use companion influence for all of them, for the artifact stat increase, and then for the artifact class feature, use aspect of the pack with 3 out of 4. I think I did this one right. 3 out of 4 in the aspect of the pack actual class feature. And then same dailies, I think, for the most, yeah, same dailies, which are Seismic Shot and Forest Ghost. But then the encounters I changed. So I changed from my last one, I changed Split the Sky to Thorn Ward, Thorn Strike. And then I have, what was it? Long Striders and Plant Growth. And I'll go over the rotation right in a second. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. No, that's it. Okay, good. So I've been a little like hesitant on using long striders all the time as well. I kind of want to start using a different encounter towards the beginning, maybe even constricting or hindering. And the reason I say that is because it's really hard to get long striders to work with an encounter to go right after it, and then to use your trigger. So basically what I'm saying is it's hard to do this rotation every time because you would need an enemy that far away from you. See, I'm doing a good amount of damage, which is awesome, but to have an enemy all the time that far away and then to come over here, do an encounter, and then start doing your at-wills is not something easy to do or to maintain. I mean, especially for things like Reg Demo and E-Demo, like I said, that I use this build for consistently, it's good because you'll have regular, I mean, for that first stage, for that first phase, you'll have the Demo Gorgon, usually with a tank or something. So I usually proc Long Striders like that while he's back there, tanking him. And then I go back here and I fight these guys. And I use, right trigger, basically apply down Gorgon of Arrows. Before that portal opens up, I use Long Striders, and I get right in the middle, use Plant Growth, and then he'll just hold down right trigger, and I just see those guys melt out of there. And it works really well for that first phase. Other things I use this build for are actually Illusionist Gambit. I switch out, this is actually kind of funny, I switch out my companion from Stronghold Siege, and I put in the Hunting Hawk. The Hunting Hawk actually provides more bonus damage the farther away I am by 10% when I'm 100 feet away. So what I usually do for Illusionist Gambit, I go all the way back here. I keep Long Striders on because I'm going to be this far. If I can, I switch Bladestorm to Aspect of the Pack. Or wait, maybe I should Aspect of the Pack with Aspect of the Falcon to increase my range. And I use Long Striders and I just hold down right trigger. And you can see right now I'm doing ranges from 60 to 5,000 to 60,000. And what works really awesome is that the lightning helps spread this out pretty good. So I'm doing like 7,000, 30,000 to multiple targets, like in ranges. And then you can see one going up in the hundreds back there, because I'm consistently getting my crit strike pretty high up. Additionally, from this, and I haven't tested this, like I don't really have a way, but if I use Twin Bladestorm, maybe I'll try it again. I don't know if it works for this, but I know it works for when I get here and I use my right trigger to clear the ground. It increases my damage dealt. So I usually have that on. With Bladestorm. So Twin Bladestorm and Bladestorm is usually when I'm running in combat. And then, so basically how this build works is anytime you use an encounter, a melee encounter, I covered it in the PvP thing, the same thing, it works with Flurry. So every time I use a melee encounter, I get Flurry. I want to start using my Clear the Ground. So like I said, this build revolves around multiple targets. So I hold down my right trigger and try to get as much damage as I can. That I think covers this build for the most part. If there is anything else, let me know in the comments. Moving on, I have Combat Pathfinder, I think is my next one. Go ahead and guess and say yeah, because that's my, Combat Pathfinder. So this one, instead of running, I'm using the Trailblazer's longbow. I don't really know if this is a necessary build. This is kind of one I've been testing with, but I just wanted to show you guys anyway. So it's basically, and it's hard to do because of what I said. You have to use long striders really quick, and then go in and use the gushing wound. So it doesn't really work that well with this little target, but I've had some pretty good results against Reg Demo and Epic Demo in that second round, or even in the third round. So when I pop long striders against them and I run in close and pop that gushing wound, I do some pretty good damage. But the reason I basically have exactly everything the same from the last build I just showed you. The only difference is that this is Pathfinder. So instead of having, what was my left trigger? Aim strike, I have Hunter's Teamwork. So it provides me that 12% debuff, and I'm just switching between, instead of using my other set, I'm using the longbow set with the Dread enchantment, since I said I wanted to focus more on using Gushing Wound and my encounters here. So I'm using, and it's doing quite a bit of damage, honestly. So it's, like I said, I don't have Clear the Ground, which I wish I had with this build, or it would make it pretty awesome. But as you can see, I'm still getting some pretty good damage with the encounters. So you can probably, for the most part, just disregard this because I'm testing this one for the most part. But I just, again, wanted to show you guys. So again, everything is exactly the same from the last one. I'm doing a good amount of damage. I'm just kind of like messing with this one, tweaking with this build. Moving on to the last build, I have the Dragonflight Archery Pathfinder build. And why do I have... Okay, let me switch this. I don't know why I have this gear on, but I'm switching over to my PvE gear. Everything is exactly the same. You can see with most people with loadouts, nothing much changes with PvE gear unless they're like a tank or something. But yeah, nothing changes on here. Mount insignia, mount bonuses, everything's the same. Boons, blah 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 blah. The only difference here is the feats. So here's my archery build basically. Using Ghostwalker, more crit chance, Quarry with Pathfinder, long shot. So basically the further away I am, and you'll see from the videos up above, especially when I'm fighting the dragon, how much damage I'm getting. When I'm using ranged powers, I get more damage. So I think having really high recovery, which I don't have, because like I said, I'm reusing a lot of the same stuff. I would go a lot more recovery with this build, and because crit chance is pretty much handled, I think. Let's see. Before I go into the powers, just to show you what my crit chance is. My crit chance should be extremely high. Yeah, 96%, which is pretty awesome with this build. And I've tried some instances of using Skirmisher's Gambit, but it didn't work out too well with cooldowns. I really did not like it. Plus with using the Dread and how this is so heavily with encounters, it works really well. But one of the more, actually, let me just go into the powers. But one of the more important things I was gonna say is also the at will of aim strike. All right, so going through the powers, Asp with the Falcon. Like I said, the more range you have, the more damage you'll deal. Seismic Shot's really good. Instead of Forest Ghost, I'm going with Slasher's Mark. If I need to get close to the target, this works really well. Honestly, I've only been using this build for Dragonflight, but I've really been liking it. You can see from the video up above, I'm hitting pretty good numbers. So for my encounters, I'm using Commanding Shot, because this provides a good amount of damage. You can see right there, 47,000 physical damage. Hawk Shot, another good one, 54,000.
physical damage. The only bad thing that I don't like about these encounters is that there's a really long cooldown. And then the last one, of course, is the long striders, because this gives me a big damage buff. And it also helps me run around faster. So just to show you really quick, even though I have all those videos, I can use long striders, and I can get a lot farther, especially with Aspect of the Falcon. And I didn't change it, but if I changed over to my hunting hawk, I would do more damage while I'm just sitting here with my at-wills. But you can see I'm already close to 1 million damage right now with just at-wills, and I'm swapping in some encounters, and now I'm switching back. So that pretty much covers this build. Again, I haven't changed anything as far as my equipment or anything. And yeah, that covers the all the builds and loadouts.
And if you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you guys very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to leave me a like, subscribe, and for future content, make sure to hit that bell icon to get notified when I upload. Special thanks goes out to my friend Renoa at STPunishR1. So that does it, guys. If you want more information on the combat build, powers, mechanics, go ahead and click over here for my last video. And then if you want more about Trapper and some other play styles, as well as mechanics and powers, click over and over here.